I'm really, really excited for today. This episode is really close to my heart because I'm sitting down with someone who's been a really big part of my journey. Little did I know in 2021 or 2022, when I was pitching my startup at a startup competition, that not only would I make a friend and have his guidance and wisdom support me on my business journey, but also help me find more self-love, really learn how to navigate some of the darkest moments of my life with grace and compassion and forgiveness for myself and for my parents. This gentleman, this legend, has been like a brother to me, and he's not just someone that's showed up to offer advice or guidance from theory. He's someone who's really studied the art of living and the self and performance and potential like a scientist, and has fought his own fair share of demons, and yet still shows up in the world with an open heart and a big smile. And he's really a living embodiment of everything that he teaches. And I'm really, really proud to call him my brother and to have him here with us today. So thank you for being here, Constantine.
Thank you, David. Beautiful. You touched my heart. What a wild journey we've had, us two. It's as if we reconnected from a relationship that we once knew in many lifetimes ago, with no issues, no qualms, and an accelerated, rapid pace into really trying to find out what does it mean to live a full life and who am I, answering that question. And you've continued time and time again to impress me, inspire me, despite all of the challenges I've thrown at you. Some challenges were really crazily provocative, and maybe I've shared that with some people and they've said, "Are you crazy?" I said, "Yeah, but he stood up and he took it. He doubled down." So I just want to acknowledge you and thank you. And the work that you do is really important right now. And the work that you do on yourself is even more important, and that affects your conduct and your relational field as a result. And so I'm very inspired by your liberated initiative, and I'm looking forward to growing and breathing light into what can sometimes feel very dark in the world right now. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I'm really curious because you dropped a little nugget in there, and I wonder whether whoever's listening might be interested as well. What are one of these crazy challenges that you've thrown my way?
Let's see which one would be less triggering for people. There's one that's profound that sticks out, was in preparation for a serious conversation with your father, and in this whole multi-platform and cyclical evolution of reclaiming your power and kind of stepping into the space of, I don't recognize anyone's authority, not in an arrogant way, and being able to, I think, maybe coach or role play a little bit and, be prepared for various reactions, and you stepping in and doing that. I don't know. There's not a lot of people who would do, without giving too much away, too much of the personal details. That was impressive. And the fact that you did it and the way you handled yourself afterwards is inspirational. And it means that you're ready. We need to grow the fuck up. And this is what you're doing. This is what we're trying to do.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I definitely had so many fears and trepidations and preconceived notions about that conversation, how I thought it might go and how it might affect me. And it's been, I think, one of the greatest teachings in my life, and thanks to your support and guidance and just sort of creating a space for me to step into that power, is learning how to stand up to authority. It doesn't have to be parents. And again, like you pointed out, I do want to echo, it's not about being arrogant and putting people down, especially people closest to us. It's really about acknowledging boundaries and acknowledging what's okay and what's not okay, and really, owning your sovereignty as a being. And so whether it's parents or the authorities that we see out in the world, there's a lot of noise and chaos from authorities or powers that be, either close to us or far away, that are actually competing for our attention and competing for our consciousness, I would go as far as saying. I think, yeah, we've never lived in like a noisier, chaotic world, and setting these kind of healthy boundaries and owning your power, I think, has never been more important. You write in your book, which we'll talk about today, the only refuge worth finding is within. I think that's really important. Has certainly been important for me on my journey, and I think will serve a lot of people as well in terms of reclaiming their power. What does that really mean? What does the only refuge worth finding is within really mean?
In writing the book, which I've soft launched last week to 30 or 40 beta readers who've kindly offered their time and attention, and going to be releasing in January, is really about finding ineffable refuge, which is a refuge that is indescribable, profound, and non-ordinary. And as a result, it's totally unshakable. Finding inner refuge is something that's reliable, is something that you can cultivate, is something that doesn't require permission, and is something that counters the subtle belief that we may have. This is what I talked about before. I just mentioned about growing up. Part of growing up is to realize no one's coming to save you. No government cares about you. No entity, no business cares about you. No app will save you. No AI will save you. No parent will save you. No partner will save you. Once you get to that precipice, which is, I know, quite negative, it's so damn positive because you're out of options. There's only one way, and that is to find inner refuge and develop and cultivate with the right practices a refuge that supports you, loves you, and allows you to chase goals that make sense to you, that you've inspected yourself versus things that other people want you to chase. And, you know, a lot of us don't know what we're chasing, or don't know that it's not our goal, it's not our dream that we're chasing. And so the thing about inner refuge is that it's reliable. And like I said before, there's so much data to substantiate that. Everyone's looking for refuge everywhere else. A lot of people are looking for refuge everywhere else, externally, not internally. And whether that's as a result of, you know, it's a result of lack of information, that this isn't even an option. Okay, you hear about meditation from the perspective of, you know, just get through this challenge, or that's a nice thing to do. It's very kind of nice, but it's not. It's a weapon. It's something that you can double down on to, and I talk about it in the book, to change the way your brain operates and your heart operates, and therefore your reality. And there's a lot of neuroscience in the book, which I use to kind of just validate that this stuff isn't woo-woo. It's absolutely not. So finding inner refuge is really, especially ineffable refuge, which is unquantifiable refuge, is something that you can return to reliably, that will have your back. The only person who has your back is you, if you give yourself a chance.
Beautiful. I really, really want to expand more on, firstly, the whole concept of ineffability, and then what finding refuge actually looks like. So whoever's listening can access this in an easily digestible way. But before I do that, something that you did speak about is around outsourcing power and authority to governments or businesses or apps or AI, or seeking refuge externally because of a lack of information, which I kind of want to challenge you on a little bit here, because we're living in an information age, right? Like, we have never had more abundance of information at our fingertips. You just speak into your phone for a few seconds into the ChatGPT app, you get the answer straight away. So is it that we don't have enough information about practices like these, or is it something else? Why is it, and if you can expand, like, why are so many people, and there's no judgment here, because I've been on this path, and I know you have as well, constantly giving more to external things. Why are so many people really trapped in giving their power and authority to external, as opposed to reclaiming that from within?
Because people haven't had their own experience of. You have to be careful about what I'm about to say. This is not for everyone, and everyone has their own purpose, otherwise known as karma, to go on a particular journey to figure out what is really important, what really matters. And for me, what really matters is that thing that is permanent. And so Like, we have all this information, but yet we are the most distracted society in the history of humankind, and the most mentally ill. So it isn't more information, it's the right information at the right time. And I hope that the book is doing a little dent in that, because I build a case for how, I don't know how much to swear on this, but this
Go for
recording,
it. It's just
but we have totally done a number on ourselves. We totally have. Not for any conspiracy, just the human condition. If you understand the human condition and the economic condition, you understand why we ended up here. And there just needs to be some other authority on top of that basically says, you humans don't know how to look after yourselves. And that might be AI in the future. I don't know. But there's a lot of turbulent times to get through before we get to that stage. For now, though, I'm not talking about the future. What I believe is that I've tried many different solutions to my mental health issues, my nervous system challenges, and my continuous seeking, that I've put the things that worked for me personally in the book. And it's a part memoir, part self-help book with a lot of data to substantiate. But it also comes from my direct experience in helping clients go on a journey. And I really can't tell you anyone that hasn't had an improvement in their life, in their experience of reality, in their experience of their self-love, and in the experience of what they're choosing in their life. So I hate to say 100% like success, but man, it's better than any other damn success that I've ever promised in my tech career in the past. I'll tell you that. So I don't know if I've answered your question. Looking for a quick fix is not the answer. That it does take cue-induced learning to actually change the brain. Luckily, we have what's called neuroplasticity that allows the brain to change. And if you're practicing the right things, it'll change for the better. Simple things like, even from a positive psychology standpoint, noticing and labeling positive emotions and positive experiences in your everyday, even in the midst of chaos, will change your state. Training yourself to do so, to notice the positive. I know that sounds really mundane and weak, but let me tell you, there's nothing, I write nothing weak in this book. It's a punch in the face. Why? Because we damn need it. Because we're distracted and we're addicted to being distracted. Dopamine, serotonin, amygdala hijacks. We're literally in a crisis right now, where no one can really see a future worth living into. And it's a real concern. If it's not climate, if it's not AI, if it's not socio-political and technological crises are happening all at the same time. And you know what? It's not just affecting little old Australia or big old America. It's affecting everyone at the same time. And this is something that not even the sages of the past, not even the leaders of the past, not even the mystics of the past have experienced. They did experience their versions of things, but I also find that these kind of challenges are what create opportunity, what create the realization that, holy shit, everything's impermanent. And trust is at all-time lows, especially institutions and organizations. The chronic fatigue associated with cataclysmic chronic fatigue and all the news, everyone's wishing for the comet to come and save us. Hopefully it's aliens, the A1 Atlas, that's swinging by right now. I mean, I don't know if you spend any time on YouTube, but if you believe that, it looks really great. Why? Because we're done. We're done. People are done. They're sick of it. And that's very sad, because the answer is just one simple move. One simple move, if you understand how to use it. Now, honestly, as you know, as someone who's practiced with me and who's walked the path with me, this stuff works 100% of the time. I'm sorry. And I'm not holding back anymore. I had someone who I hold really dearly, as in writing the book, I said to him, I got a bit of feedback and I've had to water it down and this and that. And he looked at me, he goes, please don't do that. We need this. We need this wrathful aggression about what we can do. Because I tell you what, you can do it. You don't need anyone's approval. You don't need any funding or budget approvals. You don't need the right political party to be in there. You don't need the new CEO. This is what is in your own hands. And so when I do some work with various beings, I ask the question about why so much suffering, and the answer is always because this is the fastest way to awaken to the truth, to reality, because we're addicted to so many things, and it's not really our fault. It all started with infinite search, like no ending. These organizations are responsible for this shit. They could easily just go next page like it used to be, so that you could go a little gap to kind of make, it's really concerning. I mean, I don't spend any time on TikTok, but I know it's worse. But hey, all the other channels are doing the same thing. Sound bites that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And according to Microsoft, everyone's attention span is less than a goldfish now. It's 8 seconds on average. How are we going to progress? You can't progress when you've got a bunch of 9 billion people who are so distracted. So as these authority figures shout at us, why shout back? This isn't the voice of reason. This is the voice of awareness, the voice of awakening, that we have the power to awaken in this moment and to find refuge in this moment. And I had a co-founder who was really big into Qigong and energy practices from China. He's a martial artist. And, he was trying to convince me, he was trying to get me to practice and do things. But at the time, I realized this is a more direct answer to your question. I realized that my nervous system was fried. I could possibly meditate, but my nervous system was fried. So my parasympathetic nervous system was just not able to get into a balanced state, wasn't able to get calm. And that anything that was closely resembling calm was scary. And, we talk about not being, having limiting beliefs associated with not being enough and chasing the next thing and the next thing. But our nervous systems are fried. And so when I started to learn more about activating the parasympathetic nervous system and using various, somatic body-based practices, that accelerated the effects of myself and my clients. So I'll write about that in the book. So that's why I think we have all the information. It may not be in a recipe an easy recipe. And this is just one recipe that I offer. But if you don't address your nervous system, that's always chasing after mode, just physically and mentally, then you can have all the information in the world. It doesn't really land. We don't grok it and feel it. And that's what I think is missing.
I'm with you. I think adding nervous system work into my repertoire has been a game changer as well, because I can meditate all I want, but I'm not going to meditate my way out of trauma or, fear that's trapped in my nervous system, or grief, or whatever it might be. So, coupled with the endless scroll and, catastrophic news cycles, which, as we've spoken about, can hijack people's amygdala and send people into like a sympathetic dominant state, it's super important to work with the nervous system. I think like any high performer who has really excelled in any industry, whether could be a sport or it could be business or anything, they have supreme control over their nervous system. They know how to regulate. And it's not about being always regulated like a monk. There's always going to be shit out there that triggers us or sends us into fight or flight. And that's good. That's why we have that system built in us to protect us. But it's about, what are we doing to come back to that baseline level of calm, wellness, ease, which is our natural state. And so I want to jump on what you said just around, I guess, the state of the world. And if there's someone who's listening right now who might be waking up and flicking on the news and feeling really concerned about what they're seeing and in fear and really worried about the future of the world, coupled with outsourcing their power to these news cycles or to people in their lives and living on social media and just kind of consuming the content that it feeds them with no sort of ability to filter out what's not serving them versus what is. And they're stressed and they're living in survival and they're really struggling. Like what would be the first thing that, you might say to them or share with them to help them get a taste of what it is like to access inner refuge, what it is like to and abide in that awareness. And if you can sort of define some of these terms as well, I think that'd be really useful if people are hearing them for the first time.
Yeah. The first thing is more cognitive, and that is when you're watching the news feeds and the way it's being reported, It's really hard to get close to the truth. And that is a trap because our mind is a meaning making and sense making. And so we're trying to wade into the forest of hell to try and find that morsel of truth. But if you use discernment, I think that's the word you were looking for, discernment, to kind of ask the question with every 8-minute YouTube, whatever piece of news, you just say, who gains from this? And what is their economic model? It's eyeballs, it's advertising, it's pull you in, right? If you know that, then you know that they're just going to make everything outrageous, such as in the book I talk about the research I did on just the digital deluge that we're in, and that is that fake news spreads 6 times faster than the truth, 6 times. So basically the internet is full of fake news because that's what sells advertising. We can go into why that happens, but it's just similar to when you drive on the expressway and people slow down because someone is pulled over, because they couldn't wait to go to the toilet, and everyone's freaking out because of that. It's just the human condition. We are always looking for danger, and they know this. These organizations know this. It's pretty straightforward. If you know it in yourself, you don't need to read a neuroscience manual. But the problem is now that connection, social connection, which was what social media was meant to be, and social debate has now been weaponized for hate, radicalization, and separation. Now, I don't want to make it sound, because I don't know the answer to this, as if people are pulling strings, because that's not what I'm saying. It's just that that's what sells ads, and as a result, we have done a number on ourselves. Do you understand? But when you understand that, you can watch the news in measured quantities. I'll talk about my experiments with social media shortly. But you can take it with measured quantities and realize and ask the question all the time, who gains from this? What's their economic model? Who gains from this? What's their economic model? And it diffuses the impact that it has. It diffuses it because you kind of go, wow, that's smart. That's smart psyops, psychological operations to... Now, again, I'm not saying psychological operations to control the masses. Psychological, because I'm not an authority in that stuff. But it is controlling the masses in a negative way. The impact is negative. We can't stop watching the riots, watching ICE, watching the most watchable, crazy leaders in the world right now. It's really concerning. Refuge is finding a place that doesn't trigger you, that allows you to find calm, tranquility, and peace, and that allows you to return to it when you've had enough of the ordinary world. The ordinary world is out there. Awareness practices, which we've kind of touched on, and in the book I refer to it as, in the traditional Tibetan name, Rigpa. Rigpa is awakened awareness, or awareness of awareness, are particular practices that have absolute, direct, and precise and immediate impacts on your neurophysiology and have been proven in the lab. And these practices aren't really that readily available. I mean, it's only because of, the Tibetans fleeing Tibet. This is all, by the way, comes from some of the most amazing practices and teachings from Tibet in terms of their Buddhism and Bon, which is their shamanic lineages, that have been put to the test in labs with long-term meditators, and they've discovered things they've never discovered in brains before, which is super high gamma, which shows synchrony and accessing a reality that's in Ineffable Refuge. And so they've only seen these kind of brain scans on people who are on LSD. I'm not saying you're going to get... Some people have reported that it's like taking a small dose, but it's something that allows us to really cut through the delusion that we're living in. And if for any listeners who are concerned about the future, you can't do anything about it. Be in the present. If you're in the present and you can access a resourced nervous system and ineffable refuge, the future will change. Now, you can only address the future now. In fact, the past can only be recalled or experienced or remembered in the now. There's only one thing happening, and that's now, the absolute now, right? Some people call it the present. There's a lot of different names for it. But it's a timeless, changeless experience that's in the present moment. Even the present is too late because it's happening at 30 frames per second, and it's quite wonderful. And so the way that I find a lot of people have a lot of benefit is when they learn how to concentrate. Concentration practice is critical to regain the ultimate sovereignty, a mind that stays completely from a mind that is absolutely neurotic, doom. We're literally propagandizing ourselves now with going after thoughts about everything else. So if we can learn concentration practices, which I refer to in the book again, it increases what's called metacognitive awareness to be able to be more discerning about where is my mind going. Not to be militant, but to actually go, oh, look at the mind. Come back, thank you. Just with some lightheartedness. Now, there might be listeners going, oh, if only it was that easy and all that kind of stuff, but all this, righteous accusations about we should be really worried about what's going on. Yeah, I am worried, and this is the best thing you can do. Nothing else. My other teacher would say the first act of war is defense. But when we can actually be resourced, despite the adversity, despite VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, then you're a beast. Because now you're able to respond, not react, which is what everyone else is doing. It's not working. How much more evidence do we need? How much?
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of negativity out there. And what I've noticed in my own journey, that when I subscribe to it and let it consume me, then I become, to use your language, completely under-resourced, and I feel triggered. And then I can't really be part of the solution, because the solution, I believe, isn't going to come from fighting the problem. It's like, I think Einstein said it. I think it was Einstein. He was like, yeah, you can't solve a problem from the same consciousness that created it. So
Yeah.
like what really helps me is sort of looking out at the world and seeing like, oh, okay, there's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of destruction, there's a lot of conflict. I don't like that, but I know what I do want. That contrast, has now given me access to how I do want the world to look like, and is sort of like a blueprint for me in how I want to show up. Because if you have enough people showing up, in a way that actually is abiding in awareness, in peace, in presence, in self-love, the scales will tilt. And there's so much research around this as well that I want to speak to, because I think it's important. I do transcendental meditation alongside these practices that you've shared with me. And there's a study called the square root of 1%. When you have the square root of 1% of a population of a city or a country or the world, it starts to have noticeable effects on the ecosystem. So they reported that when that square root of 1% was reached, there was a 76% decrease in war-related deaths, a decrease in hospitalization, in crime. And so, yeah, this stuff works. It's really powerful. And I think these practices, if you're completely new to this space, can seem, possibly a little bit intangible or difficult to grasp. And, you talk about some of these impacts and on the brain, especially around like, an LSD trip. And it might bring up a lot of uncertainty about how can I really find refuge? How can I take steps towards it in a way that actually I feel comfortable with, or I feel safe with? So perhaps can you speak to even your journey of going from where you were, perhaps feeling really under-resourced and feeling distracted, to implementing these practices? And I know you even did a little experiment of your own around deleting social media versus engaging with these practices. So maybe if you can speak to that as well, to give people a snapshot of like how to start possibly integrating these practices in their lives and what they can expect to get from them once they do.
Yeah. There's a war going on for your attention. Let's not kid ourselves. And I'm not saying that there's some leader going war let's go and get their attention. It's just that regardless of the intention, it's a war, okay? Or who's in charge, it's a war. And your mind is the most precious thing ever. Where the attention goes, energy flows. It's really important. I don't know about you, but if you spent 20 minutes in the morning doom scrolling first thing because your mind is used to it and you're following something in the politics somewhere, and then you get up and you went to greet your 2 children, do you think you'd be in the optimum state to be receptive, to be a great father or mother? I don't think so. So why would we want to do that to ourselves? And so in the last 6 months, I spent a month allowing myself to get into social media more than I normally do, to learn about a few things. And I kind of set up a conservative profile, a liberal profile, and somewhere in the middle, which is really hard to do. And I just noticed how the feeds were flowing. And I would welcome everyone to do that if you wanted to go through that experiment, just to kind of see, from the purpose of trying to sense make, because everyone has an agenda and everyone's running for views. And not only did I notice that the people that I would once respected dissolve into crap, total obliterated, disgusting crap, and just, clickbaity, and never really promising on the heading. That's the other thing I would recommend is this video I'm about to watch delivering the promise in the heading? And I started to notice that it was less than 10% of the time were they actually showing breaking news, X does Y, and there's no X doing Y. So it's really concerning because that's just proof that we're being hijacked for views. So I did that for a month. One night, I allowed myself to watch whatever came up next by the algorithm, just whatever came up. I said, yes, 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 yes. Went into very upsetting, negative world so quickly. And then I said to myself, I'm not going to do my normal practice before sleep. I'm not going to do a digital detox. I'm just going to shut the computer and go to sleep. I have been an avid user of the Oura ring, which is a biofeedback device that you wear as a ring that measures your sleep quality, heart rate variability, all sorts of other things. I was part of the alpha and the beta. That was the worst night's sleep I had in 5 years. The important thing here is I woke up and I asked myself, is everyone else doing this? This is a problem. This is a problem. That month got my mind addicted to negative flows and almost like schoolyard antic. Oh, I wonder what happened to that person. Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And it took me, and then at the end of the month, I said, that's enough. And it took me 2 weeks. Now, luckily, I did apply those techniques of like asking discernment questions. But regardless, I was still my mind. I could feel my mind want to reach for more. My brain, I could literally feel a part of my brain that isn't normally activated because it's not so addicted to things, reach for more negative news, like the righteous side of my brain. And it took me 2 weeks, and then I decided I'll do a 4-day digital detox and get off social. And that's what it took, 2.5 weeks of hardcore, stuff. No one's doing that. So that's a real concern. Now, how did I get to that? It's an interesting journey, story in that I thought I was a good meditator back up until the year 2012, 13. And I had a successful company with a couple of co-founders, and we got acquired and, became successful and had wealth and all that kind of stuff. And then but at the time I had a lot of anxiety. I was totally coffeed up to get through life, and my nervous system was totally fried. I didn't even know the word nervous system, to be honest with you. And it got to a point where even after the exit, and I was kind of at a point where I was semi-retired and, bought the dream house and the dream this and the dream that. And after about three months, I realized I was not happier. And then I asked myself deep questions like, well, does that mean I have to keep being busy and keep making money and keep doing all this other stuff that I kind of loathed, to be honest with you, in many ways? And then I realized maybe there's no there. There's no gold at the end of the rainbow out there. And so then somehow intuitively I realized, well, I have high levels of discipline. That's why we had such business success and other things. Maybe if I turned that around onto myself and started to try and apply some of the teachings of these not just Tibetan masters, but other masters, to see if I could actually find a here. So I discovered there's no there for me. Okay, I'm not saying that it's not a prescription for others, but it's definitely, I wanted to try and find if there was a here. In other words, could I find what is here? Definition: joy, bliss, happiness for no reason all the time. That's all. That's all I wanted. It took a few years, and it took a lot of breakdowns of marriage, of all sorts of crazy shit, and a major mystical experiences out the wazoo, purges that ended my anxiety. I haven't had anxiety for 12, 13 years with no pharma. That made me realize I could double down even more and learn about this stuff so that I could teach others. And then to a point where I definitely can attest that there's a here. Absolutely, 100% of the time. And that is such good news for all of us, right? Now, it's good news for me because I was struggling and I was suicidal. After I had a successful exit and I was wealthy and I had the dream everything. It makes no sense, but I was told that, you'll get to a stage of happily ever after. Not true. So that's how I got to that point. Along the way, lots of grace, lots of support, lots of curiosity, and also getting to a stage where I started to turn the other way and start to get involved in purifying, liberating, and moving up the ancestral line to learn more about my parents' upbringing and their parents' upbringing, and just get to a point where I'm having deeper conversations. I'm sure that a lot of people think I'm the black sheep in the family because I became unorthodox, and love you, brother and sister. And I was just so blessed to find amazing teachers who were mystical and graceful and, just at the right time. And I don't know, when you find a teacher in your heart, just like everyone may go, that guy's crazy. And you go, are you serious? This guy's amazing. And yeah, the internal reckoning. So there was a lot of magic in the path and the journey. And it's always unfolding, it's not a sudden awakening and happily ever after. No, it's a sudden awakening, gradual unfolding. And that's pretty cool because then you're busy doing not only clearing your own shit, but also the possibility of clearing your ancestors' shit, and then possibly being someone who clears everyone's shit. And for me, that's a profound mission. And you know what? It's really hard to kind of express this without sounding arrogant, but it's got nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with learning how to get out of the way and to find ineffable refuge that's already there. You're not creating it. You're discovering it and clearing away. So as a result, I created a waking up, cleaning up to show up pathway. Very simple. And that's what I do for a living.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story, brother. It's deeply inspiring. As someone who's also experienced tough mental health challenges and suicidal ideation, to hear how you've not only acknowledged that for yourself, but also just seemingly chased down these different teachings and gems and techniques with an unquenchable thirst for expansion, expression. Like it's cool to see how far you've come, and it just seems like you're just getting started from what I can see. So something that you've touched on a few times, and I think it's definitely spoken about a lot in the personal development space and spiritual space as well, is this whole concept of awakening. And even you say wake up, clean up, show up. You've also talked about suffering being the expressway to awakening. That's certainly been my experience, and listeners who tuned into the first episode will understand my journey with substance abuse and the dealing with the law, and really pulling myself out of a deep dark hole, which I'm grateful for now, and it's been such a blessing because of where I am and the consciousness that I have now. For those who, like we've discussed, might be on the cusp of, the tipping point of I've had enough of this negativity and this stress and toxicity in my body and my nervous system and my mind. And I just want to, liberate myself from these cycles of destructive thinking patterns and behaviors and feelings. What does awakening mean, and how can someone walk that path? I mean, I know there's many different paths to awakening, but yeah, perhaps if we can just define it, because I think it can be quite an intangible and potentially esoteric term. What is awakening?
That's a good question. It's not a joke for me. It's not a feel-good thing for me. It's real. Awakening is awakening to the true nature of your mind. And in honor of my teacher, Dr. Daniel P. Brown, I find that the way he explains it is really, really easy. And that is that, I think a lot of us have heard that we identify with our thoughts too much, and our thoughts are typically negative. And typically you believe that you're the number one main actor in the movie. Everyone thinks they're the number one main actor in the movie. Surely everyone can't be the main actor in the movie, So, and there are real neurocorrelates as a result that because of that, and that is that the default mode network, it ruminates in between times when you're not busy or when you're cooking or when you're brushing your teeth. And it's always kind of replaying stuff as in, why did that person say that to me? I don't know why they did that to me. And this me is reifying a separate sense of self. And so it's the problem is identifying with thoughts and identifying with my sense of self. And they're typically negative. I don't know how many, have you ever had a thought that said, man, you're amazing?
With practice, with years of practice.
I've never had one that said that. I might be excited after an event. That's different. Something's happened. You solve a problem, you write a book, you go into flow. Wow, that's amazing. But that's you responding to the feel-good chemicals. But, when you're brushing your teeth, you go, man, you're amazing. Like, it doesn't happen. It's always negative. It mainly is. There's always it's always directed at, right? It's you versus. There's always you versus. So that reification is a problem. The awakening for me is awakening to the fact that thoughts are insubstantial, but have control if we give them and identify. Give them control and identify with them. Our sense of self is insubstantial, but it has power when we identify with it. So we talked about the sense of self that has a negativity bias. And then there's the non-ordinary stuff, which is about time and space and separate consciousness. But what's more important is this. If you can look into the true nature of your mind right now, in this moment, let's just do this as a pointing instruction. If you consider, what's your favorite food, David?
My favorite food is fettuccine carbonara.
Oh, really? And where do you like that the most? Do you know a place? Do you make it yourself?
I like the one that Titeu pasta makes. It's delicious with breadcrumbs.
Okay. Can you see it?
Oh yeah.
In your mind's eye now?
Taste it.
Can you taste it?
Oh yeah.
Cool. So see, thoughts have some serious pull on you, right? You're starting to salivate, right?
It's moist.
But there's no food here.
That's true.
And when you have it in your mind, the carbonara, hold it in your mind. Maybe you see it, maybe you hear it, whatever. And look at the screen, look at me. Can you see the carbonara and me at the same time?
It's tough.
So is the carbonara transparent?
I guess so, yeah. I can't really see it.
So it's an illusion, like a rainbow, right? You can put your hand through it, right? So that's how you cut through thoughts. You kind of go, oh, they're clearly appearing, but insubstantial. And that reduces the pull that they have. Didn't know we had optionality. We didn't know that, I can choose or not choose to believe this thought and I can let it go. There's a lot of mindfulness practices that use that as well. But that's just the first half step. Mindfulness is beautiful and powerful, as you know from the practices we've done. But in this case, what we're doing is we're cutting through thoughts. And when you get a taste of the true nature of your mind, the qualities of your mind, what happens to that carbonara is it kind of like evaporates like mist dissolving in the atmosphere on a summer's day. It has no grab anymore. Now, I'm not going to do a full-on Dzogchen pointing out instruction on this call in order to honor the lineage, but always being mindful of the present moment. Concentration obviously helps with that. But also looking into the nature and inquiry, this cognitive awakening. There's 3 types of awakenings. There's cognitive, there's emotional, and there's spiritual. Actually, I think maybe there's 4. Emotional is kind of somatic. And so let's start with cognitive. And in my path, I discovered many teachers along the way, but one of the most profound early on at that time was Byron Katie's The Work, that uses 4 questions and turnarounds to cut through and give you a taste of cognitive awakening. That can be more than one truth, that what you believe is keeping you trapped. And so awakening is awakening to the true nature of yourself and your reality, versus being deluded by thoughts that turn into more thoughts. It's just like watching Netflix, and you've got all the different channels, all the different images and possible trailers, and you put your cursor on it, and it goes boop, 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 you kind of go, oh, that actress, click, and it goes, and then you go like 8 episodes, 8 series, 8 seasons later, your life is gone. I don't remember what happened. That's exactly the same with thoughts. There can be 100 billion mind moments in the blink of an eye, according to the neuroscientist. And depending on your hedonic tone, like your karmic thing, you'll pick up, oh, it's that time of the day, so I need pizza. And then it just goes, Domino's pizza. I want a Godfather pizza with extra sauce and feta cheese. That's what happens to me. Out of all the things that you could possibly think about, you go there, right? And that's karma playing out, because you want to repeat the experience, right? So we're deluded. We're not running the show. And people talk about freedom and liberation. Freedom and liberation. What? You're not even liberated from your own thoughts. Let's start there, please. It's time, man. And so the practice of learning how to cut through thoughts to start with is really important. And, some kind of mindfulness. There's so many apps. Just stick to one. And the other thing is, once you do a practice, just check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I better or worse? On a scale of red, amber, green, am I better or worse than before this practice? Because I'll tell you why it doesn't stick sometimes. It doesn't stick because of something called state memory. When your state changes, you don't remember how bad it was. So in fact, it's actually valuable to do a red, amber, green status check before you start the practice, and then realize, I went from amber to green in in a short period of time. And that way you're training yourself to keep coming back and keep training yourself. Because the problem is that unless you have an app that kind of does that for you, and you still got to be committed to it, we're fighting against billions of dollars in hijacking our mind and attention for the sake of advertising. When these aliens come out of the Atlas with the comment, they're gonna go, I don't think you guys are worth saving. Like ads. Yeah, I know. You got to make fun of it as well, because it is a bit of a comedy. I mean, it's not. It's very serious. Lightheartedness is really important, because otherwise we're going to be burnt out. We can't solve any problem. And to get back to, which I used a quote in the book, Einstein said, can't solve a problem from the same state of mind or consciousness that created it. What we're doing here is these practices shift your basis of operation to go from centric, me-centric, or ethnocentric, me and everyone else is wrong, to, various stages. And the shortcut is to go into integrative or pluralistic. In other words, everyone, it's so beautiful. There's so much creativity, and everyone's opinion could be right, especially from their perspective. Shifting the vantage point is like as simple as this. If you and I were in a fight in person, first person to you here on this plane, looks pretty serious, and we're, fully engaged and, whatever. But if you kind of were looking at it from a high-rise building looking down, kind of go, wow, there's a fight going on. But if you're up in a plane looking down, if you could see it, you kind of go, oh, there's a fight going on. Or if you're out in the International Space Station looking down, you kind of go, is that a fight? To the vantage, same thing's happening, but the vantage point context shifted the way we're responding to it in this case. Funny example, but it works.
Mm.
So the vantage point that we're coming from really matters. Really matters.
What would you say then to someone who hears all this? This is great, finding ineffable refuge, changing my vantage point so I can, I guess, find a greater level of inner peace, joy, bliss, always for no reason. What do you say to someone who's listening to this and thinking, well, isn't this just like bypassing? Isn't this just like passivity? Like I'm not really showing up to the world and I'm just trying to bypass the situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something I write heavily about in the book. It's not bypassing. These practices are about transcending and yet including. So the vantage, I didn't say the vantage points still connected to the ground, to what matters, to the event, right? You're still connected to, there's a fight going on Earth, but where I'm coming from has shifted, but I'm still caring. In fact, I care more now because I'm more removed from it. It's not so personal. So it's not about bypassing. And yes, bypassing sometimes is important. We need to resource ourselves, and bypassing is great. Like just kind of, you know what, I need 3 days away before I can make a decision. I don't know if that's bypassing. I think that's quite responsible. But know that you're doing it. That's the key here. Know that, okay, I think I'm bypassing right now, and not to turn it into a habit. Because once you become more and more comfortable with that vast, spacious, timeless, changeless, centerless vantage point, then you can lean into the healing. But at some point in the path, it can start with bypassing, and then at some point you're with the right practices, right? That's what I'm purporting to here. And look, there are many, many ways, but at the end of the day, if you don't come back and work on cleaning up your attachment styles, your relationships, your relationship with yourself, what really matters to you. And I, in the book, talk about turning your tormentors into your mentors, because you become the world's best student for your life, and realize that was just lessons to be picked up there, like boundaries, like selling yourself out, like, making decisions out of duress versus out of abundance. And why the cleanup? The cleanup allows you to have ineffable courage, which could be a book, to work with the parts of you that are unseen, unhealed, unwitnessed, burdened. Because then it's much easier to access this ineffable refuge in all times and in all circumstances. It's really hard to do the cleanup job from the sense of self that's broken and still hurt. It's actually impossible. And that is why bypassing is not, I'm not saying that bypassing is it's beneficial when you're burnt out, but this is not bypassing. This is the hero's journey. I'm sorry. Everything else is bypassing. Doom scrolling is bypassing. Blaming is bypassing. Being busy is bypassing. The reason I got handed so much suffering after having a successful exit was I had more time in my hands, and all my demons came up out of the woodwork saying, you have time now, let's get you. All these unprocessed emotions, all this unprocessed trauma. So, yeah. And look, I work with a lot of people in all sorts of ages, but mainly later on in their life. And, they're at a stage where when they get a taste of this, they realize, I just want to dedicate the rest of my life to cleaning up. Because they know that at some point it's going to hurt, even as you get older, like just getting to a point where you can find your true reason for forgiveness, your true reason for, mending old broken relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. So, and that's been my experience as well with these practices. It's helped me hold space for those parts that have felt burdened or broken or hurt or judged. And I mean, I kind of want to loop back to the nervous system and the body, because we spoke about the impact of, news cycles and social media, and unprocessed trauma. When we're acting from that state and we're implementing like a cognitive practice like this, it's certainly helpful to at least I can speak from my experience. It's helped me put more distance between myself, my true self, my true nature, and the thoughts that I previously have been misidentifying with, thinking that I am them.
Mm.
And yet for so long, I carried so much like tension and tightness in my body, and all of this like stuck energy in my nervous system, trauma, which would, no matter how many times I wanted to, let's say, cognitively told myself, okay, I'm going to set healthy boundaries. I'm not going to drink tonight, or I'm going to leave at this hour, or I'm not going to see this person because I know they're not good for me, or whatever it is, right? But then I would still play out that pattern. And it's like, yeah, I had an awareness of what's going on, and I saw it, but yet I was still sabotaging myself. This is something I think a lot of people can relate to. Certainly a lot of people that I work with experience this, and we know that the subconscious controls 95% of your behavior. So no matter how conscious you are of these patterns, that's only affecting about 5% of the behavior that's unfolding in your day to day. So perhaps can you take us on a little journey just around what are the like body-based practices that have helped you release this stress and tension from the nervous system, to process trauma? You spoke about parts work, which is, and I've been in a session with you, multiple sessions with you, which have been a real game changer for me as well. So thank you. So perhaps can you speak to that and let us know how that has perhaps even helped you liberate yourself from these self-sabotaging patterns?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I definitely recommend emotional freedom tapping technique, EFT or tapping, which most people some could be familiar with, but it just damn works. Like, doesn't require you to believe and have any faith. In fact, I challenge you to be angry about it, and it'll work regardless, and you can add affirmations and all that kind of stuff, and it's really great because what it's doing is activating the parasympathetic and, cortisol reduction 46%. Like, what? Seriously, it's pretty amazing. So I find that to be very powerful, but I use that and blend it in with some Rigpa practices to be able to get into shift out of the mind, out of the brain, out of the head, the experience of the head into the body, and then into spacious awareness. That is very, very powerful for nervous system regulation. And then, IFS, internal family systems, thanks to Dick Schwartz and the amazing work that he's done and a lot of his team over the last 40 years, it's not a surprise that it's taking therapy by storm and everyone signing up to be an IFS therapist, because it damn works. And it was discovered, it wasn't created, it was discovered by asking many, many pragmatic questions and discovering that there's an internal world that has internal physics and that we're made up of parts, not with, DID in terms of having, not at the extreme case, but just having various parts that are unhealed and that are trying the damn best to keep us safe, but they're young versions of us. And if we learn how to unblend, witness, unburden, and it's a trust building exercise, then you can be, without being mystical, operating out of your current version of yourself, your mature, evolved version of you, not the 8-year-old regress one. And the way I kind of land that for people is like, if your mother came knocking on the door right now unexpectedly, would your voice and mannerism change compared to how you were speaking to me? Probably would. That's a part. So learning that and becoming familiar with it, it's very embodied, it's very obvious. And the modality is quite loving, and it answers the question, how do you need to learn how to love yourself? It really is damn powerful. And there's been offshoots of that as well that address different challenges, and it really is powerful. I also recommend Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, which Dan, my teacher, co-created, and it's kind of like a converted Tibetan practice of creating in your mind ideal parents and running through the 5 things that most kids need in terms of like being seen, being attuned to, being championed, being coached. I can't remember the 5th one, where you choose an ideal mother, an ideal father, and put yourself through those 5 scenarios that increase the chances of becoming or having a secure attachment style, because there are 4 attachment styles: anxious, preoccupied, disorganized, and avoidant, and then obviously secure. And the 1 to 3, the 3-year outcome study showed 100% success rate. Like, that's amazing. It's about 67% success rate after a year of using the Altair parent figure protocol. And it's really beautiful and quite powerful and to be facilitated. That's also somatic. So you create these ideal parents, and I'm very gifted in having the possibility, beautiful people in my life that I would love to have as ideal father or ideal mother. And so I just put myself in the same scenario. This is actually a good practice for anyone. If you have someone that you really idealize, or someone that you've worked with or been a teacher of yours or whatever, and they just elicit the ability to see you as you are, and you replay a troubling time at life. I'll use mine, when I would come home with my report card, which was never really good, and I would be really scared of showing my father because he would get emotionally dysregulated, to put it nicely. And it got to a point after a couple of years where I realized that this is dangerous, that I should actually just flick the report card at him and get a head start and run. That instead of that, still bad report card, but I would come home to, one of my teachers or someone that was my ideal father, and see how they would react. And that really reparented myself in a very somatic way. Sometimes you get grief coming up because you realize what you missed, but it's also part of the healing journey. I definitely like that. Yoga is so powerful, not so that you can become a gymnast, just because there's so much energy trapped in the body, and the body keeps the score. It really does. So those practices are definitely useful. Dance, definitely. I have a chapter on electronic dance music in my book, because I literally wrote the book listening to dance music. I think I sent you some stuff, and I got access to new DJs and 12 new albums, and just had it on all the time. And I just think everyone's got their own cup of tea with regards to that. But how do we get into? So then there's a chapter on what I call ecstatic refuge, using music, using the practices to listen to the music, or going into a particular scene in a scenario, or in a canyon or a mountain, and really connecting with nature. Obviously, there's many other ways to get access to ecstasy, but access to awe, the AWE, awe, there's a really good book on this called Awe, and the research of it is really important. And it's a way to kind of access a non-ordinary state, totally sober, but that connects you with this vast vantage point that we talked about.
I love dance. It's been such a game changer for me on my journey, and getting out of my head and into my body. And yeah, I've been religiously practicing yoga, and actually being inspired by your lovely Martha to go deeper into soma and somatic yoga, which has really helped process a lot of tension in the body. Because you're right, and obviously there's the book The Body Keeps the Score. I think reading about it is one thing, and then really noticing, my God, like I'm sitting in this uncomfortable posture and I'm breathing through it and I'm crying through it, and a lot of emotions coming up, and it's like, oh my God, this emotion, it's got mass. It's got like its own gravitational pull. It's a really dense energy that's trapped in there, and so that's why I'm glad that you spoke to that. Do you want to add something?
I mean, that's definitely, I mean, I didn't mention the power of somatic, somatics that my lovely wife teaches, has shown accelerated and made me more of a believer that, I can be a consciousness hacker, a cognitive hacker, as I like to be, but there's a lot that can be said about, activating a cleaning up process in the body through really slow kind of movements, or even using havening, which is like EFT, but even more beautiful and powerful, with various protocol practices that really cut through some of the, from a neuroscientific perspective, some of the chains that get kicked off when we get traumatized, and how the chains can like unlink. I worked with her on something that I was challenged with for years, and it was one and done. And I was very intimate with the problem and what it feels like post, session. So I definitely recommend somatic awakening, that's for sure. And then these things make it easier for us to advance despite the adversity, right? Because you can't advance when you're stressed and anxious and scared and can't sleep. I'm sorry. That hustle shit doesn't work. I've written this book in a state of awe, and I can't wait to write another one. Like I've never written a book. And yes, there was a bit of a learning curve, but I think for writing, everyone should write a book about a memoir of their life for the purposes of yourself and the clarity and the catharsis that comes from it. Because I thought I was done, like after about 6 weeks, I couldn't get beyond 120 pages. And then somehow I ended up at 550 pages, where I'd go to sleep and think, okay, that's about it. I think I'm done, right? And then I wake up in the morning with another 3 chapters ready to go. And I went, this must be what it feels like to channel stuff, And I didn't want to argue with it, going, oh, no, but I only wanted to write 300 pages. Like, I just went, just go. Just go, go, go. People have writer's block, by the way. Just keep going. That's a thing, And I'm going, yeah, there is. Don't talk about it. Shh, keep going, and recognizing that. And so interoception is very important. This is this whole thing about somatic awakening and also being able to know when you're, as you said about, athletes knowing how to regulate. That's about interoception, going, you know what, I'm not 100%, or my sleep was off, or to do certain supplementation or whatever it might be. Because this is an amazing, amazing machine, lack of a better word. It's totally amazing. It really is. And we don't know how to use it.
Yeah.
I had to use 5 devices to learn how to trust my body. And that's okay. Like, that was a great experience. I used the Muse monitor. I'll talk about it. The Muse monitor, the Focus Calm, the Neo Rhythm, the Heart Math monitor, the Aura Ring. And, they become a novelty. But then after a while, you kind of go, all right, I trust. Okay, thank you. Cool. Now take the training wheels off and just trust yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we're unfortunately not given a manual for how to work this intelligent piece of machinery composed of, such intricate, complex systems in the brain and the heart. And not only that, but also everything that we've been speaking about around the awareness behind that, so that you can truly be like the programmer that's building the game, as opposed to just a player in the game itself. Like, you actually can reclaim that power over these different systems, and that's.
Can I?
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to add an extra bonus for that, is to recognize, if you're using that metaphor, not only that the master in the game, but also that actually that the game is being played spontaneously, better than you could ever try to make it play the game. And you kind of go, whoa. And I remember a saying from Ramana Maharshi, who I was, pretty passionate about many years ago. And he said, at some point, you just get on the raft and you just go like this. That's it. You just watch it all go. You just watch, go down the river, and you kind of go, oh, that's a nice tree. And that's a nice, and I'm kind of going, what? As a type A, what? Why would I want to do that? Because now I get it. Now I get it. I'm going to go. And it's not exactly that. That's a metaphor. It's just kind of go, wow, man, all this stuff's coming out spontaneously, and it's kind of like, at a meta level, it's like awake awareness showing itself to itself for the sake of its own liberation. And that is, as Dan would say, chronic wonder river flow. Everything's just chronic wonder, even the apparent bad shit.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. It also seems like a rite of passage for, many type A personalities and strivers and seekers and achievers and performers to walk along. Because I know if I heard that a few years ago, that would have just seemed ridiculous. Like, you're telling me I can go with the flow of life, that it's actually supporting me, that it's nurturing me, that the game is being played, and it's actually being played in my favor if I can choose to see that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed that. And I think we've spoke about this, suffering being the expressway to awakening, and having to go on your own journey, and maybe your path is like mine, like yours, Constantine, to really, really hustle hard and to try and strive and achieve and accumulate and acquire, off at the expense of your own mental or physical health. I don't recommend it. But I felt like I needed to do that. I know you felt like you needed to do that as well.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I didn't know there was another option until I achieved that option. And I kind of looked around at the top of the mountain and I went, surely not. This is not what I expected. This is not good. Yeah, that's what I said. Don't follow my prescription, and don't go, oh, that's it. There's no there. Constantine said, no, you have to taste the pizza and go, because it's the difference between reading the menu for the pizza and eating the pizza. It's not the same thing. I don't care what anyone says. It's not the same thing. This is about direct experience, and you have to experience it, because maybe for you and your karma and your purpose, it's a great thing for now. Okay. And this is what it means to be discerning, and to bring back, to reclaim your power, to kind of go, yeah, I'm not going to do the same thing that everyone else does. I love my co-founders, but they're still doing the same damn thing.
Yeah. And so we've spoken about waking up. We've spoken about cleaning up. Before we dive into your book, because I want to give you a chance to talk more about it at the end, let's talk about showing up. So what is the byproduct of implementing these practices, accessing Ineffable Refuge, transforming one's mind and body and soul to show up in a new way? What does that look like in leadership, in relationships, in creativity, in the world?
The showing up kind of happens spontaneously when you clean up and wake up, because when you have healed shame and guilt and certain attachment styles and what matters for you, I mean, it's kind of easy, right? Because you realize you don't enter into toxic stuff anymore. You don't add suffering. You don't possibly create suffering. If there is suffering, you don't add to it. You kind of try and mitigate. And you speak your truth, and you don't really care about approval. It's about being rejection proof. Like, kill, I'm spared. You rejected me. Thank you. I love you. Well, we probably get rejected 10 times more than we know we do. But it doesn't seem to bother us. And that's freedom. And then the showing up happens spontaneously because you're just speaking your truth, and you're realizing you're operating at the absolute present moment. And the beauty of impermanence. I love impermanence. A lot of people might think I'm crazy, but impermanence is great, because impermanence also applies for suffering and pain and loss, right? It's an equal opportunity employer. It doesn't care. Impermanence is impermanent. And, it also makes life sweet. Even the good stuff, the bad stuff, appreciate it, because it's not going to last. It really isn't. And when I say, I wanted to find the thing that mattered to me was, what is it one thing that's not impermanent? It's not to bypass. It's to actually abide as it, experiencing everything as the permanent thing, experiencing the impermanent thing. Because then you can love it fully, because you realize, wow, even this will end. Even this chaos will end. Even this $1 million will end. This relationship will end. Everything you've ever wanted when you were 10 is gone. Someone else owns it, maybe. Where is it? In the scrap heap? Is it recycled? It's gone. But we don't slow down enough to allow ourselves to kind of think about that and kind of go, oh, shit, you're right. And that sounds kind of demoralizing, but it's not. It's not. It means make it count. Grow the fuck up. That's what I mean by that. And, you just kind of go, you don't know if you're going to wake up tomorrow, man.
Yeah.
One of the practices I used to love a lot was to hold my breath until I couldn't, I was gasping 3 times before I took the breath. And that reminded me how fragile this life is and how I am. I wouldn't recommend that to everyone. Maybe do it, gasp once, not 3 times. But, you just kind of go, like, and stay awake in it. Like, you just realize, holy shit, this thing that I call the breath, that I go, yeah, big deal, a breath. It's the only deal. It's the only deal. That's the other thing. Breath work is really powerful as well. I like it. And that's what we don't get taught, how to let go. And impermanence, though, is a great teacher. It'll keep, practicing that. So showing up allows you to show up in the face of impermanence, knowing that even if there's challenges, uncertainty, unrest in some ways, it's impermanent, man. Just wait. Just wait a couple of seconds. If you're operating out of the present, absolute present moment, you see it. It comes and it goes. It actually comes from nowhere, as you know, and it goes nowhere.
Hmm.
And we're so caught up in something that's fleeting.
Yeah, it's true, and it's not demoralizing, although it might sound like it. I think it's important to acknowledge that the attachment to it is the demoralizing part. And I mean, I love ancient wisdom. I think there's a reason why it's stood the test of time. So whether it's Buddha saying attachment is the root of all suffering, or even like the Stoic saying memento mori, which is what you were talking about before, of potentially not waking up tomorrow. There's a lot of value in that, and yeah, it may seem dark, but what's even more dark, I believe, is that holding on to things so tightly that we think will make us really happy, and then being without them and facing the crushing, devastating darkness, not knowing not knowing who I am without this, because I was so strongly identified with it. So that's definitely been the darkest of times and periods in my life. So holding things lightly, as you would say, or even not even holding them at all, to go one step further, notice the impermanence of everything, has been a real game changer.
And that's coming back to the definition of awakening. It's staying awake even in the darkness. It's staying awake even in the joy, and awake to the truth. And the truth is that everything's impermanent, and it's not personal. And that in itself creates freedom. You kind of go, it's not personal. It's not personal. I could never know who you truly are, David. I'd love to, but I can't. It's impossible. I don't know what happens between your ears. I don't know everything you've felt, what touched you. There's so many things that's ineffable. It's impossible to express. So I don't really know. I can't live my life according to your rules, because you may look like you approve me, but maybe you're saying that to be politically correct, not because it was actually worthy of approval. So we're walking around our lives living some kind of lie and not honoring our truth, right? And so people can't operate beyond their level of evolution. And that's where compassion comes in, because you realize, cool, no fault. It's just how it is. Part of my biggest challenge was not being a preacher, because my mum's very preachy. She's amazing, absolutely amazing, and very, very devout Greek Orthodox Christian. And she's total. Her devotion is my inspiration. That's where I get my devotion from, right? But I realize that doesn't work, because it pisses me off when she preaches to me. So why would it work to anyone else? So instead, I just kind of respond to people who ask me questions about, what do you do here and this and that? And I qualify, how much permission do I have to share? And then when does that permission end? Because some of the stuff we share, even on this podcast, can be in your face. It's definitely unorthodox. So, and I think that's really important, because where anything that's orthodox is institutionalized, and that's so saturated. There's no carbonara.
I wish. Yeah, yeah, and look at where it's got us now. But I encourage you, the listener, to keep an open heart and an open mind to these ideas, even if they may challenge your pre-existing beliefs, because I mean, doing that has certainly helped me go from where I was and feeling really despondent and depressed and insecure and inadequate to feeling a lot better and feeling comfortable in who I am, and being able to have the courage to do something like this and to share my truth publicly, which I
Yeah,
definitely wouldn't have seen myself doing 2 years ago, let alone 10 years ago when I was in the pits. I want to hear from you. We want to hear from you, Constantine, more about the book. So, Ineffable Refuge. I know it's in beta at the moment. I have the privilege and the honor of reading it, but I'm keen to hear more about, I guess, anything that we haven't covered already in this conversation that you think would be useful sharing.
We've covered a lot of the stuff that is touched on. There are some other areas, but the book is coming out on the 15th. You can find me on ineffable.au or ineffablerefuge.com. And, look, I offer coaching, I offer retreats and programs. The book will also have links to there's about 3 guided practices that take you through the whole thing. And then actually there's more, because there's also 5 protocols to address the 5 challenging emotions of fear, anger, shame. I can't remember the other one. And so, the book in itself is also practical in application and experience. I'm going to be setting up a community as well to practice together and take people on a particular journey to be able to, it's always really powerful. And I have a chapter on practicing with other people and seeing people grow and supporting each other. Sympathetic joy is a really important aspect of an active and thriving conscious community, and being able to support each other along the way is really, really important, because there can be some days and times where the hero's journey becomes very isolating and very challenging and painful. But if you know that there's someone else there that you can turn to and say, did you experience this? As has been the case with David and myself, then it just makes it so much lighter and so much more inspiring. And so, yeah, and so the book is, it's about 200 pages. I've also got an audiobook version that's about 9 hours, and that's been fun and games. But, yeah, I think that we need more ineffability in the world. So far, I think that's what's going to save us. Not my book, Ineffability. And it's not my ineffability. It's no one's, but everyone's at the same time.
That's beautiful. Now, you said 15th. So the book coming out on the 15th of December? Or January?
January, yeah.
January. Okay, good. Just for our listeners who might be interested. To close, and in vein of the name of this podcast, what do you, Constantine, believe that being liberated actually means? What does being liberated actually mean to you?
Being free to be spontaneous, whatever arises, without needing to plan, knowing that you're fully supported no matter what.
Mic drop. Oh, man, this has been such a beautiful conversation. Oh, man, I've really enjoyed it. I hope.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, man. So much love. I have a feeling it won't be the last one we have on this podcast either.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of ground to cover. And yeah, please go check out Constantine. I'll include all of his links in the show notes so you can go deeper. He's had a real meaningful impact on my life. I hope this conversation has just given you a glimpse of peace, or perhaps awareness and clarity, comfort, perhaps even an opportunity to free yourself from unproductive thinking patterns or behaviors just by virtue of some of the practices and ideas we've shared. Yeah, go deep, do your research, find what works best for you. And, whether you are chasing goals or peace, remember that you're always enough. You were always enough. And the work is now learning to believe it. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next episode.